Hi, everyone. It is blindingly bright up here. So if you're thinking about staying in the back, if you want to come to the front so I could see you, that would be like fantastic. Any takers? No? No? People outside? No? All right. So my name is Amara Graham. I'm here to talk to you today about tech debt and developer experience. Before I get started, though, I'm curious. I've ran into a number of developer advocates today, but just with a show of hands for the folks in the room, has anyone heard of developer relations or developer experience? If you have, raise your hand. Fantastic. We're going to be fast friends. This is perfect. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to introduce myself a little bit more lengthy than just my bio, because I think this is the first time that I've spoken to a CI/CD DevOps audience, so you may not know me. Again, my name's Amara. I'm leading the first developer experience team at Camunda. I've had a number of roles in developer relations. I think you heard a little bit from my bio that I was a developer and then kind of shifted away from enterprise and IT applications. So I like to say I was raised in enterprise IT, but now I am thriving in enabling product teams, which I think is a much better fit for me. But the really cool thing that I noticed actually this year, it might have even been in preparing for this talk, that all of the positions that I've had over the course of my career have all been enablement leading. Meaning enabling developers in how to use products better, frameworks better. It's really all around making developers have a more efficient time or a more successful time when using products, tooling, things that I'm familiar with, so sharing that education. And then what's really crazy, and a quick side note, is I have actually come full circle in my career where I started building BPM applications and process automation tools, front ends for them in fact. Now I am running a developer experience team that caters to those exact folks. So I think it's super cool that I'm now in a position to enable the developers who I once was. And on that note, I cannot believe that I'm somehow celebrating 10 years in tech. It doesn't feel like 10 years. Maybe it's like 10 dog years or something like that. But I'm super happy to be here. So what are we doing in developer experience at Camunda? And if you see across my slides, I will abbreviate developer experience as DX, DevX, written all the way out, developer experience. There is literally no standard for how we do this. I guess as an industry, we should all come together and decide like what acronym we're going to choose and how we're going to move forward. But if you're confused about that, that's what's going on. We all shift them. I'm going to do it as well. But for my flavor of developer experience and what we're doing at Camunda, I want you to think external enablement. And I say, this flavor or my flavor or Camunda's flavor because developer experience is really in a place right now where I guess you can say it's a renaissance period. There's a number of different teams who have established that there's something that we need to do in the developer experience space or the developer productivity space. How are we going to name that? How are we going to brand that? Who is going to handle that work? Should we have a dedicated team? All of this I'll kind of touch on throughout the rest of my talk. But again, for the purposes of when I talk about what we're doing at Camunda, it's external enablement. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that as I continue. We report to the CTO via the developer relations team. Again, depending on your flavor or what you're doing at your company, you may see this shifted where you have the developer experience team is the overarching team and DevRel reports up through them. Again, for us, we report through the developer relations team. Within developer relations, we run a 3-pillar program. So we have our enablement side, which is me and developer experience. We have our advocacy side, which is awareness. And then we have our engagement side, which is our community team. So together, those 3 teams make up our developer relations team. It's also why you may hear me say things where you're like, wait, but I thought the advocates would do that, or I thought maybe the product engineering teams would do that. Again, it's what works for us. It's what we're running currently. I also mentioned that we report up through the products team. Products at Camunda is really all of our technical folks who are directly interacting with the product. So that's engineering, technical support, DevRel, product management, and product design. So it's not products and just the product managers like, again, some companies do. We are focused on our developer community, and based on the show of hands that I had in the room, it sounds like many of you are familiar with developer relations, so I won't have to go down that huge rabbit hole of what is a developer community, but the long and short of it is we really are responsible for the enablement aspects for anyone and everyone who is around the ecosystem of our products. That's a really big challenge, especially in the enablement space when you start thinking about the kinds of personas that you're trying to enable, the folks that you're trying to interact with, where you're bringing your awareness programs, but specifically in the enablement space, we try as best as we can to focus on developer personas, of which there could be many, depending on your granularity there. For the programs that we run, to kind of help you maybe get a little bit more of a tangible sense of what we're working on, we're responsible for documentation that's both like infrastructure and strategy, as well as contributor experience. There is more to it than that, but if you can kind of think about the rest of the talk with that as a frame of reference, I think that would be super helpful. You also see here the three folks that are on my team. We've got a technical writer, a developer experience engineer, and a technical community builder. The technical community builder is the one that I want to kind of just give a quick hint towards because we also have community managers on our DevRel team that are on the community pillar or the engagement pillar. Where the builder differs, if you think about it from who and how they're interacting with people. So our community builder is really responsible for our Camunda Community Hub and our forum experience, which are going to be the touch points for like the ultra technical people, if you will, or our contributors and the contributor experience where they're looking for technical engagement to be successful with either those projects or the questions that they're asking out on the forum. So hopefully this kind of sets some context for where I'm going to go throughout the rest of the slides. Because again, I know there's a number of different teams that are talking about what they want to do in the developer experience space. I'm seeing teams rebranding themselves as developer experience teams, and that could range from DevRel to certain DevOps teams, internal enablement, internal advocacy, all kind of seem to fall under this umbrella of developer experience, tackling slightly different things. So we have an internal handbook at Camunda, which I hope one day becomes public so that I don't have to just like copy and paste things out of it. But this is what our developer experience page includes, kind of as a brief summary for folks internally to understand what we're doing, how we may interact with them in the future. So again, I mentioned we're a part of a pillar program or a 3-pillar program. We are the enablement piece, focusing on content and excellent experiences. That can be kind of a little bit vague for folks, which is why I continue on to talk about our mission around lowering barriers for all developers in and around the Camunda ecosystem. And this is where it starts to become pretty important to kind of read through my gibberish, because it's very clear that we're going to interact with some internal teams who don't have a great understanding of the developer community. They think we're only interacting with the folks who are working on our open source or free offering, but really it's everyone. And this last sentence that I have on the slide, including educating potential customers, silently lurking community members, high impact contributors, and more, it is everyone. So even though we're just focused on the developer persona or the set of developer personas, it's everyone from the people who know Camunda or know process automation all the way up through, or I guess take a step back and say all the way through the people who are like, I don't know what Camunda is, I don't know what process automation is, I just have this problem and I'm trying to solve it, through to the people who are ranting, raving, they love Camunda, they're telling all their friends about it. So again, an interesting space to be in because you have a number of folks that you're trying to cater content or these experiences to. Again, because there was enough people that mentioned that they knew something about DevRel, I'll just very briefly say that DevRel supports long tail or large funnel engagements. So when we talk about developer experience, DX is to developers as UX is to users. That's part of why I try to embrace the DX abbreviation, to really kind of hammer home the point that it's leading off of UX and crafting a user experience, but this is crafting a developer experience. The more focused on, heard, and supported that your developer community is, the better your developer experience. So if you want to focus on a solid experience from onboarding to executing in the eyes of the developer that you expect to work on your product, you'll have more advocates, more sponsors, and more friends, more people who are excited to use your product and excited to tell people about your product. No one wants to fight a product. They just want it to work well for them, and they want it to work quickly. And I'm sure that resonates with the folks in this room. So you might be asking yourself at this point, couldn't the product engineering teams handle this? This all sounds like things that could be baked in. There's all things that sound like, stuff that the user experience team should consider when they're building out a user experience for a developer-focused or a developer-friendly tool. And I will give the classic answer that I'm sure many of you are expecting. It depends. It depends on your priorities, what your teams are doing, maybe what your product manager wants to be done, or the roadmap that you have laid out in front of you, or maybe even the foundational groundwork that you've prepared for yourself. So I put together a few considerations for developer experience work. This is by no means like a comprehensive list. This isn't everything that my team is working on. I don't even think this is everything that's on like a strategy doc that I have. It's really just kind of like a sample of things. And again, this is specific to our flavor of developer experience. You may have a team that is supporting things like SDKs or things that are product adjacent, kind of similar to the product adjacent tool section that I have. But again, you may have a slightly different list. This is the one that's kind of leaning more towards what we are doing. So with these considerations, I have 3 buckets here. I have documentation, contributor experience, and then this product adjacent tools, which is kind of my catch-all for the things that developers would probably love to see and enjoy seeing you do some sort of tender loving care to provide so that they don't have to build that themselves. Because of course, you could build a really nice API. You could even make a really nice documentation experience for your API reference and say, okay, I'm done. But if you went the extra step of creating an API wrapper, a client, an SDK, whatever you want to call it, depending on your programming language or framework of choice, that makes developers feel welcomed. It's something that they don't have to do. They can look at examples. They can see how other people are using it. They don't have to necessarily build it themselves. There are, of course, going to be people that say, cool, you have an SDK. I'm going to build my own because I want that control. That's fine. We're not going to stop them either. But having that product adjacent tool set available and ready for them is that nice step in the direction towards we've thought about the developer experience, we've thought about what people want to use, and we're trying to do that ourselves so that we can increase their efficiency and they can just focus on the problem they're trying to solve rather than building tools around our tool set, for instance. So again, some developer experience teams are going to build SDKs, APIs, integrations, maybe work on partner enablement, technical examples, other pieces. But this group of things, particularly the bolded general quality of life improvements, is where I see a large bucket of things that developer experience teams are working on or are prioritizing actively. So my question to you is, on this list, are you cool with having your product engineering teams, I advanced the slide and it did nothing, which is fine. Are you cool with your product engineering teams working on all of these items on top of new features, on top of any sort of bugs and things that come up? Are they going to have the time? And if you're a product manager, who I don't know if we have product managers in the room, are you cool? We got one product manager, so maybe I'll talk to just you. Are you cool with having your engineering team work on this and maybe prioritizing it over new features, over bugs, or maybe things that are coming in from high-cost customers, or high-dollar customers, I should say?
I am not, which is why I became a developer advocate.
Oh. that was great. It's like I planted you. So that if you didn't hear, he said, I am not. That's why I became a developer advocate. But from the product managers that I've worked with in the past, it's been really challenging to get some of these items above the line. And it's not because they don't care about them. It's not because that they don't want to have a solid developer experience. It just becomes very challenging to have your teams that are working on core engineering features split their time in other places. What I didn't mention, but I should, is in the documentation space, we have one technical writer at Camunda. That one technical writer does not write all of our product documentation. That would be crazy. Our engineers actually write our documentation. So if they're writing the core features and writing the documentation, are they really going to have time for mentoring contributors or supporting our maintainers, creating IDE plugins, and then gardening all of that in such a way that it's not stale, it's fresh, it works with every release of everything from our product to third-party components? This is where it kind of gets challenging, and this is where I would say it's up to you asking, are you okay with volunteer projects being supported on a volunteer basis? So if you're going to have something like a client or an API wrapper, are your customers or are your community members okay with that being supported in a volunteer capacity? Or is that a place where you could potentially breed or grow tech debt? Because for me, those are the items that I take a look at and say, that makes me nervous that that's an item that's going to be tech debt. And some of this is sneaky. I think there's a number of times where you've either done an internal POC, or maybe you have internal hack days or hackathons where you've built a little something, you've shown it to your team, and you've been like, oh, this is super cool. And then someone saw it and is like, great. Is that a marketable feature, or can we release that to a customer? Or it'd be really cool if we gave this to this person and then suddenly it needs to be on a path that's fully supported, but you don't have time to fully support it. That's another issue that comes up as these like weird tech debt things. So let's see if I advance this forward. Hey. All of this, again, is, like I said, is a breeding ground for tech debt. And again, it's a choice. I'm not saying that it's absolutely going to become tech debt, but I will say that there's been a number of projects that I've been involved with, particularly around the developer experience space, where I come in and I say, hey, I looked out on GitHub and I saw that we have this project. It's maybe an API wrapper. It's really cool because it introduces our code or our product into the React Native community. That's super cool, but I see it hasn't been updated in a year, and the product manager goes, like, so are we not gonna update that, or are we not investing in the React Native community? Again, that's a tech debt item, and that's one of those things that someone who is looking at your products specifically from a developer experience lens, if they look and they see, hey, I really want to run your solution in a React Native context, for instance, I can't do it because the API wrapper that I saw that's sitting out on your GitHub looks old, looks stale. Am I going to have to build my own? I don't want to build my own. I don't have the time to build my own. And you get into this whole big mess of if you just maintained it, you would have won a friend and made someone happy. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you learned something. I hope you took something away from it. I'm all over the internet. I'm also at the Camunda booth. You can come and hang out, chat with us either about process automation, what you think you want to do with Camunda, or what we could maybe convince you to do with Camunda, or you can come talk to me about developer experience topics. I would love to see more developer experience teams out there. I would love to know what flavor your company is doing in the developer experience space if you are. But yeah, come chat me up. Thanks.